Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. If you are hearing this, congratulations, your headset is working properly. To adjust the sound on your headsets, use the volume rocker on the side near the power button. If you are curious about the full U.S. Center schedule, please scan the QR code at the reception desk. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. If you are hearing this, congratulations, your headset is working properly. To adjust the sound on your headsets, use the volume rocker on the side near the power button. If you are curious about the full U.S. Center schedule, please scan the QR code at the reception desk.
Hello and welcome to the U.S. Center and our event, putting the tripling renewables pledge to work, energy storage and beyond. First, a video.
Over the last decade, the cost of solar and wind energy plummeted by up to 80%. How? Concentrated funding in research and development helped unlock astonishing progress and clear pathways to net zero. But completing the journey is going to take more than just solar and wind. We need clean hydrogen. We need floating offshore wind and enhanced geothermal power. We need long-duration energy storage, carbon management, industrial decarbonization, and more. Technologies that can offer enormous enormous potential if we can knock down the barriers blocking their full-scale deployment. So enter the Earthshots initiative. Through Energy Earthshots, the U.S. Department of Energy is mobilizing the diverse expertise and talent across our national labs, along with academia and nonprofits and the private sector. And we're doing this to solve some of the most pressing technical problems across the energy economy. We have to deliver breakthrough innovations that can rapidly drive down costs, that can improve performance and accelerate our transition to clean energy. And we need your help to do it. We're putting out an all-hands-on-deck call for innovation and collaboration and speed to guarantee a better future for our children and our grandchildren. So answer the call. Join us.
Please welcome to the stage Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm.
Thank you much. Hi, everybody. I want to thank our hosts here in Baku, of course, and all the folks who helped to put this together. This morning, I was proud to represent the United States as we signed on to the Azerbaijan COP presidency's goal of 1,500 gigawatts of long-duration storage. Obviously, that is a commitment to increase energy storage sixfold by 2030. We hope that events like this will encourage more parties to join, and we hope that it is part of the Leaders Initiative, and we're hoping that we can get everybody on board, because long-duration energy storage is the key that makes renewables baseload-like. And so if we want to get to tripling our renewable energy, the only way to do that is with long-duration energy storage. So glad that we're having this event, glad that you are here. Let me just say, we just had an election in the United States, you may have heard. And while the U.S. government may not be at the table in the next 4 years, I can assure you that all of our partners around the world and in the United States at the subnational level and the private sector are at the table. And what we have done in the United States to lock in the future of clean energy is undoable. So let me just stop for that on that for just a moment, because when President Biden signed into law the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, he unleashed an inexorable movement to embed clean energy in the United States. The results of these two bills alone have been astonishing. We have now over 900 factories that have announced they are opening up or expanding in the United States to make the products that will reduce CO2 emissions. That is reversing the trend of lost manufacturing jobs in the United States. Over 400,000 jobs in clean energy. 80% of those jobs, those investments, have gone to communities in red America, in Republican districts, in Republican states. It would be political malpractice to undo this law. Even though there is a majority in Congress, we have got enormous support among Republicans and, of course, Democrats to keep these laws in place, because people see the benefit that it is having across the nation. Over $75 billion so far as a result of this in-grid investment. Another key part of the strategy, of course, to have our ultimate big, hairy, audacious goal of getting to 100% clean electricity on the U.S. grid by 2035 and net zero by 2050. So, solutions like long-duration energy storage obviously hold enormous potential for so much, making the grid resilient, virtual power plants, all of the technologies that we're also focused on. But it all starts with having energy storage in a way that is reliable, long duration, obviously, and can really integrate into the grid. So I just want to talk about for the Department of Energy, we've been investing as a result of these two laws in a whole series of projects around the country. We've got factories now in Pennsylvania and in Maine and in West Virginia building long-duration energy factories now, employing hundreds of people building this technology. Our investments in the grid include not just utility scale, but of course storage that accompanies rooftop solar. And so our partners here, EDF is here, and we are in the middle of a project in Puerto Rico. EDF is one of the partners, but we want thousands and thousands of homes in Puerto Rico to have rooftop solar and storage, and we've begun that process as well. Storage installations that are grid scale, that are not just building the batteries, but installing them and deploying them across the country. California, Texas kept the lights on in the face of historic heat waves. And all of these investments, these 900 factories and thousands of projects across the country, all of them, particularly the ones that got money from the bipartisan infrastructure law, you're required to have a community benefits plan to be able to benefit the local community. And we know that communities, that when they're at the table, the projects are that much more likely to be durable. They face less resistance, fewer lawsuits in the long run, and of course the communities benefit. And when we think about the energy transition, having the community at the table rather than on the table is very important for the success of the projects and for moral reasons as well. So we've in the United States been focused on long duration energy storage. We've got now over 31 gigawatts of battery storage added to the grid since the beginning of this administration. That is a 1,400% increase from what it was. That's now enough to power 32 million homes, but it's not enough. We need more and more and more. We're hungry about this. And of course, it's not just happening in the United States. It's happening globally as well. In 2021, which was my first year as Energy Secretary, the world added roughly 6 gigawatts of energy storage to the grid. And this year, we're on track to add more than 16 times that. Over 100 gigawatts of new storage will be added this year alone, which is enough to serve over 100 million households, half the homes in the EU, based upon what we've all been doing together to deploy this technology. The video that you just saw referenced Earth shots. And of course, what we need to do is bring down the cost of this technology as well. So we launched an energy Earth shot related to long duration energy storage to bring down the cost by 90% within a decade. You do that, really, you've cracked the code, right? So we have funded a number of projects across the country to figure out what works, what doesn't work, how we can continue to build on that progress. I'm really pleased to say that Australia has joined us, our first international partner on this particular Earth shot, and that's very exciting for us as well. We have momentum. Despite the election, I'm saying it, we have momentum. We have momentum, and we are not turning back. Climate change is here. We know it's accelerating. It's not going to wait for us to catch up. This past year in the United States, we've had over 165 more than $1 billion extreme energy events. I mean, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars just in the United States. Globally, we know what it is. We have got to invest in a way that saves us all, obviously, the planet, and saves dollars, ultimately, if we invest up front. So we have everything we need that, we are positioned to fix this problem. We've got, cutting-edge technologies. We've got partners across the globe. We have a business sector that is eager to find these solutions and deploy them. So, whether or not we live up to this potential is up to us. And so let's get cracking, as we say. I have a panel of people who are going to come up here and join us. Dr. Fatih Birol. Fatih, so nice to see you. Come up here. Julia Sauder. Fatih, of course, is the executive director. Come on up. Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Julia Sauder, who is the CEO of the Long Duration Energy Storage Council and the chair of the Global Renewables Alliance, and then Derek Walker, who's Vice President for Global Energy Transition at EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund. All right. The experts are with us. So glad to see you, So I'm gonna just ask a series of questions. Hope you all can see. We're only going to take a few minutes, not a whole lot, but I just want to get fresh takes from you. So, Dr. Birol, what type, I'm curious, from your perspective, of government policy changes are needed to help speed up long-duration energy storage, and what role can international partnerships play in that?
So, thank you very much for inviting me, Madam Secretary. And Madam Secretary, at the IEA, we work on almost all new clean energy technologies. We track more than 500 specific clean energy technologies. And if you ask me, if I have to pick up one of them, which is, we need all of them, but if I have to pick up one of them, which is most important compared to others, even though I don't want to be unfair to anybody else, but I think battery storage is the most important one, because it will enable, it is a key to open the door for many other technologies. So therefore, may I take this opportunity to congratulate you and your department having the leadership, what you do at home and also internationally, from the policy design to the money, the investment you are putting in the United States. It is, and it will be a source of inspiration for many governments around the world. So, colleagues, I don't think that I need to explain everybody why we need battery storage, but if you ask me, I can, very simply, I can say, if we want to have a clean energy and at the same time security, if we don't want to see prices to shoot up, if we don't want to have a volatility, we need battery storage. And there is an important role for the governments here to play, as Madam Secretary mentioned. I would mention only two of them, and as a person who works for the governments at first instance. The first one is the design of the electricity markets. So the electricity markets needs to be designed so that there should be some price incentives for this technology to flourish. This is the first thing I would like to suggest for governments to look at it, how we design the electricity markets, the price incentives. And the second one is providing incentives for the domestic manufacturing. So today, we are seeing that the battery storage, as it is the case in some other clean energy technologies, there is a concentration of manufacturing in one country in the world. It is, in my view, the most beautiful word in the energy economics is the diversification. So we have to diversify, and it is very important that in US, in Europe, in India, in Latin America, and elsewhere, we provide incentive for domestic manufacturing of batteries so that there are more countries around the world build this battery storage manufacturing capacity. We learn from each other, and we have a rule-based international cooperation. So these are the two suggestions I would like to make for the governments, namely right electricity market design with price incentives, and second, building domestic manufacturing capacity in the countries.
That's very interesting, and I'm wondering, because Julia, you are in this space, building off of what Dr. Birol said, where have you seen it work best? Number one. Number two, what do you see, maybe technology-wise, in the industry that you think is the most promising?
Thank you for the question and the opportunity to be here at the U.S. Pavilion. It's a pleasure, and it's great to be with friends on stage. And thank you for your remarks earlier and your leadership. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars have been deployed and really incentivize the marketplace in the United States that has inspired many other countries to do the same. You asked particularly about other countries. The United Kingdom recently introduced a cap and floor market mechanism to help deploy more long-duration energy storage. Australia also has a capacity investment scheme where they're working with long-duration energy storage. Targets work. And thank you for your support for the 1.5 terawatts that was identified by IEA by 2030. That flexibility is essential. And it works because we see it already deployed in Australia, 9 gigawatts of long-duration storage, in Chile, in the Philippines, in Germany, in Spain. Many countries are deploying these targets because they want to have the financing, they want to help create the markets with the right criteria so that we can bring on diversity options of long duration energy storage. We need different durations. We need 8 hours, we need 12 hours, we need 100 hours, we need seasonal, and we need ultra seasonal. And that diversity comes from mechanical, chemical, electrochemical, and thermal. And what's interesting with some of the thermal energy storage, the rocks, the salts, the metals, the markets in Europe are working because you can bring long duration energy storage in today with market incentives that are at parity with natural gas. It's not working yet in the United States, but we hope market criteria can help on this. Different types of long duration storage can utilize mines or existing infrastructure and repurpose, and that's really important to incentivize. So we are seeing long duration energy storage deployed around the world. I don't have a favorite child because we want to make sure we see a lot of diversity. But what's thrilling to see is that we have those different durations address different needs, whether it's replacing backup diesel generators on islands or whether it's using heat for industry or agriculture or even transportation. Long duration energy storage can provide this, and that's what's thrilling is to see. Once we get to 8 terawatts, we will have $540 billion of savings a year,
which is amazing. We love the technology side at the Department of Energy and the substitution of critical minerals, because you're suggesting that there's been a concentration, of course, in Asia, China, the research that is being done on substituting and, of course, on using materials that are commonplace, iron air batteries, all of that. I don't want to suggest that you have a favorite or anything like that. But if we can get to materials that are abundant and low cost, then perhaps we can start to crack the code on making the financial case compelling, obviously. Derek, I want to bring it to the ground because the Environmental Defense Fund has been a partner with Puerto Rico and local community there on the island of Culebra in putting rooftop solar and storage. And I'm wondering if you can say a word about the impact that you have seen on the ground of having that, talk about energy security for an island that's so vulnerable.
Well, absolutely. And speaking of coming to the ground, you've been there 9 times in this administration, and I just want to thank you for that leadership. In 2017, when Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, the island of Culebra lost power and many people were out of electricity for 18 months. That is debilitating for refrigeration, for the operation of emergency medical equipment, for having clean water. It is the lifeline that was cut when that hurricane came through. So in 2018, Environmental Defense Fund started a pilot effort in Culebra, and we got 45 low-income households, the most vulnerable households, set up with solar and storage systems so that by 2022, when Hurricane Fiona came through and the island lost power again, none of those 45 homes were affected. One of the families that had those systems said that they now had the comfort and security to live in safety and confidence because of those systems. And when you at the Department of Energy created the Puerto Rico Energy Resilience Fund in 2023, that's a huge slug of money for solar and storage systems. And as you said in your opening remarks, we got to do thousands, but in a new partnership that we have with DOE, we're going to do 150 more homes on Culebra so that the next time a storm comes through, we're going to have a similar effect in not only self-reliance at the household level, but really community resilience.
Well, we're super excited about that in Puerto Rico as being part of this bigger project, right? It's $1 billion that Congress appropriated to be able to serve low-income families. I mean, these are the most vulnerable. We went to Puerto Rico. We asked who should be the cutoff, who should be the first in line, because we don't have enough money to put solar and storage on everybody's home. But the Puerto Ricans themselves said, we want you to focus on people who are medically dependent. So if they're without power, and every day they have such a horrible grid in Puerto Rico. It's put together at the moment with baling wire and Scotch tape. And it goes out all the time. And people who have a medical device and who need to be able to breathe, it is literally a life and death situation. So I feel this very strongly about the importance of the life-saving nature of not just the solar, but the storage, because people need to be able to, power their devices if nothing else. So thank you for being a partner in that endeavor. Okay, last question. This is a lightning round. 1 year from today, where do you see the opportunities for global leadership going into COP30?
So what would I like to see in 1 year from today? Maybe two things. The program you have started, Madam Secretary, which is, I believe, extremely important, continues in the United States with the same speed and elsewhere in Europe, in Latin America, in India and elsewhere. So we see around the world more and more battery storage is manufactured and installed. This is one. And the second one is with the optimistic take, I would like to see the cost comes down 20% compared to this year. I think both of them would accelerate the battery storage penetration around the world and will enable us to reach the pledge we have in COP29.
I would say three things. One would be that the 1.5 terawatt of energy storage by 2030 is signed by all countries, and that vibrant community of momentum continues to build so we can finance and build more partnerships to deploy more long-duration energy storage. And the second one would be that once we have this target, that we'd have the financing so we could really bring the cost down. And the third point would be that we would be already having built 25 projects around the world.
Great. Love it. 1 year, 25 projects. Let's do it.
Well, and I think that one of the big constraints is that people don't understand that these things are possible. And so using the opportunity of learning from the Calabria model and seeing that become a scalable effort that can spread throughout the Caribbean, and see the way that the government in the U.S. has put real money and real capacity into those communities is something that can be brought forward to COP30 and into the future. It is a true example of community resilience and just transition in some of the most vulnerable areas in the world.
It speaks to the importance of having hands-on, eyes-on projects that actually work. So projects on the ground, scale, reducing costs, all of that hopefully leading us significantly toward that 1.5 terawatts of deployment. So with that, everybody, please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you all so much for joining us for this.
Actually, I'm just going to use
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave.
What is a
Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. If you are hearing this, congratulations, your headset is working properly. If you are curious about the full U.S. Center schedule, please scan the QR code at the reception desk. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. Welcome to the U.S. Center. If you are hearing this, congratulations, your headset is working properly. To adjust the sound on your headsets, use the volume rocker on the side near the power button.
Thank you all for joining us today. I am Thea Lee, Deputy Undersecretary of International Affairs at the U.S. Department of Labor, and it is my great pleasure to moderate today's panel. We're going to do two things today. We are going to talk first about the U.S. government's efforts domestically to center workers in a just transition to a clean energy economy. And then we're going to move into a discussion of how our work at the domestic level is informing our international engagement. And of course, that all fits into what we are all here to do for COP29. For our panel discussion today, we are very fortunate to have two experts in the field of energy, policy, and development, Christopher Davis and Chris Sari. Christopher is the Chief of Staff at the U.S. Department of Energy. He was previously a senior advisor to Secretary Jennifer Granholm and served during the Obama administration in the White House Office of Legislative Affairs and at the Department of Energy. Prior to that, he worked in the U.S. House of Representatives. Chris Sari serves as Acting Chief Climate Officer at USAID. She is formerly President and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation and has also previously held positions at the U.S. Department of the Interior, White House Office of Management and Budget, U.S. Department of Commerce, and the Senate Subcommittee on Oceans, Atmosphere, Fisheries, and Coast Guard. Thank you so much, Christopher and Chris, for joining us today. Before I turn the floor over to Christopher to talk about the Department of Energy's innovative work, I want to make some brief reflections about the concept of just transition and the role of just transition in U.S. domestic frameworks. I think we can all see from the lively engagement, wide participation, and contentious negotiations this week that there is a lot at stake here and that consensus is difficult. We have historic injustice, global and within-country inequality, imbalance of bargaining power, and yet we must take very ambitious steps to meet our net zero goals to keep the rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees. Just transition is absolutely central to our success. If you remember, we need to do a couple of things. We need to reach consensus here in Azerbaijan, but every head of state and every government official also needs to go home and sell the outcome, the results, to their domestic constituencies, to their domestic legislatures, to make sure we have funding and buy-in for all the work that we want to do. And because our goals are ambitious, we need the broad-based buy-in, and that's exactly what just transition is. By just transition, we mean a transition to clean energy economies where we put the voice of workers at the very center and emphasize social dialogue, which is including both workers and employers' organizations, along with governments, in the development, the implementation, and the enforcement of transition to clean energy. A critical focus for the United States' domestic efforts is promoting good jobs through investments in the clean energy economy. The Inflation Reduction Act and other legislation make up our foundational framework. And this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has taken a whole-of-government approach to accomplishing this, and we've also really made it our business to say that as we invest hundreds of billions of dollars in a clean energy transition, we also need to make sure that the jobs we are creating are good jobs and that communities and workers and employers are at the table as these decisions are made. And we are using the investments we're making in clean energy and in infrastructure to center equity, both gender equity, racial equity, and addressing some past injustices. We are on a path to meet President Biden's landmark target to reduce U.S. emissions around 50% below 2005 levels by 2030. We're investing billions into clean energy projects and technologies that come with jobs that have family-sustaining wages and use quality apprenticeship programs. We know that union workers built the American middle class, and they will also be center to powering our clean energy future, building electric vehicles, charging stations, and engineering new climate solutions. Critical to the hundreds of billions of dollars of both private sector and public sector investment in clean energy are federal requirements and incentives for companies receiving federal infrastructure funds to uphold high labor standards. The Inflation Reduction Act offers enhanced tax benefits for companies that pay good wages and that utilize registered apprenticeships. The administration is also providing resources to revitalize U.S. coal, oil, and gas and power plant communities impacted by our transition to net zero, working closely with stakeholders, including indigenous communities and unions. The Department of Labor is helping dislocated workers and new job seekers develop the skills they need for jobs in growing sectors, including and especially the clean energy sector. Our Occupational Safety and Health Administration is leading a federal rulemaking effort to implement a countrywide heat-specific workplace standard to prevent heat injury and illness to workers. We have a Good Jobs initiative that works with fellow federal agencies to incorporate Good Jobs tools, and I think Christopher will talk more about this. Evidence-based policies that improve job quality, promote equitable workforce development, empower workers, and expand access for underserved communities directly into federal contracts, grants, loans, and other funding opportunities. And through the Good Jobs Initiative, we've signed agreements with 6 other federal agencies, including the Department of Energy. Many thanks and great working with you, Christopher. And these help our departments work together to create and support pathways to millions of high-quality, good-paying energy infrastructure jobs with a free and fair chance to join a union. Now, with that, I would like to turn it over to Christopher to tell us more about the Department of Energy efforts to center workers in the transition to a clean energy economy. And we would like to hear, Christopher, how the Department of Energy has applied the principles of just transition to its domestic efforts to accelerate the clean energy transition.
Thank you so much. And can everyone hear me? No? Okay. Sounds like it's working. Thank you, Thea. I would be remiss if I didn't start where Secretary Granholm started earlier in the presentation she made, which is to note that while the election last week, you may have heard that happened, is something that will likely affect U.S. climate policy. It is likely not to have the impact on what I'm about to talk about because for a couple reasons. The investments that we've made as part of the President Biden's climate agenda, that's spending under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act, have actually catalyzed a much larger share of private sector spending. Essentially, we've put the money out into the field, and the private sector is taking it from there. We saw even during the first Trump administration, even while government wasn't leading, federal government wasn't leading the expansion, states and businesses were continuing to propel clean energy forward, and it actually did. The deployment of clean energy did accelerate during that time, and we expect that to continue to be the case now. So, thinking about what we've done at the Department of Energy, to put that in scale, we were given $100 billion in direct grant authority we can give to private businesses to help them demonstrate technologies, $250 billion in lending authority, and we help design and implement many times that much in tax credits. The net effect of it has been that in the last several years, over 900 new factories have been announced in the clean energy space. That's a huge reshoring of industry that, while a lot of the technologies were built were invented in the U.S. and often by the Department of Energy, the manufacture of those technologies had gone overseas. So trying to reclaim that. But, you know, as you mentioned, a key to redesigning a energy infrastructure is that you can do it in a way that is fairer, more just, more efficient, and of course cleaner than the one we have now, which, you know, just kind of evolved over time. This is really the only time we're able to completely redesign how it works. So in picking these projects, in picking factories to support, in picking locations to turn coal power plants into different types of energy generation, community and labor were central to that process. We used a whole range of techniques to do that, but the most revolutionary is something that had been pioneered in some states, but for the first time we did at the federal level, which is called community benefits plans that became part of the merit-based selection. This gets a little government wonky, but I can't tell you how important it is to condition the government providing money to the private sector on having a plan for how the community labor workforce is engaged. First, the Department of Energy in the past has really been more about demonstrating that the technology worked. now has become more that the technology works in context and that the workforce is brought along with that. And that's really a key overall to the success of the project, but also the success and sustainability of the industry in the U.S. So making those awards conditional on having good labor standards, whether it's anything they could be rated on from apprenticeships, of course prevailing wages, any aspect of quality jobs that were part of that, either in the construction or in the operation of those plants, is something that we look for and weighted our assessment on. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, so I'll hand it back to you, but I think that was a revolutionary way to look at it, and I think some of that was ultimately incorporated to the executive order that the President issued.
Thank you so much, Christopher, and I really appreciate hearing some of those details, because I think at the end of the day, the work that we're doing here is about the details. It is about how each country engages its own labor unions and business sector in order to craft plans that are not just energy efficient, but are also have political support and community support and are advancing all of our goals. I think so. One of the things that I want to shift over to the international and talk a little bit about what DOL is doing before we get to the important work of USAID. But on the international front, I think one of the things that we see as most important is how do we achieve policy coherence across our own government and across the UN agencies. So we were talking to the ILO earlier today about their work with, let's say, the World Trade Organization or the World Health Organization or UNESCO to include workers' voice, workers' concerns into this the bigger project that we are all engaged in. At the U.S. in the United States, a year ago tomorrow, President Biden issued the Global Labor Strategy, the Presidential Memorandum to Advance Worker Empowerment, Rights, and High Labor Standards globally. And this was really our way of ensuring that the entire U.S. government, every agency in the U.S. government, is centering and elevating workers' rights in its work, whether it is energy or technical assistance or diplomacy or financial sector work. And so that is something that's been very exciting for me, and it's been exciting to see how it plays out. And one of the places it plays out is right here in COP29, where the U.S. Department of Labor is for the first time joining our State Department on the negotiating team for the Just Transition work plan. So we're bringing the expertise of the Labor Department to that important work, and we're very excited about it. We've also been working as part of the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. We call it IPEF, the Clean Energy Agreement. 14 IPEF partner countries have committed to promote labor rights in sectors and supply chains that are crucial to clean economies. And that's work that we're doing with 14 countries throughout Asia that is also showing how we can use social dialogue with workers and employers to implement an inclusive process. We're also we have a technical assistance award that we're about to give $7 million to strengthen worker voice in climate plans and policies in Brazil and Chile. And so that is, again, something where Brazil has been such a strong partner. Of course, will be the host of COP30 next year, was the chair of the G20 this year, and is very supportive of bringing workers and employers to the table. And so we want to spread that work through our technical assistance project. We also have a $2 million project through the ILO that is on heat stress to make sure that we are enhancing workers' ability to negotiate effectively on a workplace heat so that they can have a safe and healthy workplace. And we do a lot, DOL does a lot we support research on forced labor and child labor in the clean energy sector, including in the solar and rechargeable battery supply chains. These are very important. We're very supportive of making sure that we are shifting over to clean energy, but we want to make sure that the supply chains that power clean energy are not relying on egregious labor abuses like forced labor and child labor in key partners. But so I'm very proud of DOL's international cooperation work. But when people talk about U.S. foreign assistance, they're usually not talking about DOL. They're often talking about USAID. And so that's why we're so happy to have Chris Sari here with us today. And Chris, USAID has a very extensive climate-related portfolio and also labor-related work. So I'd love to hear more from you about how your work supports just transition at USAID. Thank you.
Thank you, Thea, so much, and it's a pleasure to be here with you and Christopher talking about this issue, and in particular for me, as a member of a proud union family, very happy to be talking about worker rights. And I think you're right to point out just how important it is for us to look not only domestically, but internationally at the work for the reasons you pointed out. We want to make sure that there are safe working conditions, high wages, a healthy environment for people working in the energy transition across the board. Just for folks who might not know too much about USAID, I just want to start by saying we're the largest bilateral development agency in the world. We work in about 100 countries, and we have a staff of around 13,000 people across the globe. So let me start a little bit talking about our climate work. In 2022, USAID launched a new climate strategy. And it really was to say that climate impacts all of our work at USAID, whether you're talking about the environment or whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about conflict areas. And so we really wanted to say we need to embed climate in our DNA, and that was true for both just transitions as well as gender equity. And so when we look at these issues, they're really at the heart of the work that USAID is doing. So we can't really talk about transitioning to a low-carbon, resilient economy without talking about making sure it's inclusive and locally driven action. That's key to achieving USAID's goals for a resilient, prosperous, and equitable world. So we need to ensure that our efforts to address the climate crisis don't inadvertently contribute to social, cultural, or environmental injustice, and that a just transition must fairly and equitably distribute the benefits of climate action and ensure the sustainability of change. So that's really the heart of what we're doing. So we believe if workers and unions have a meaningful role in designing community-responsive climate solutions and are able to advocate for those solutions, they can accelerate effective climate action and movement towards a truly just transition. And I just want to give 2 examples. First, in Morocco, we are partnering with workers and unions to integrate climate and environmental priorities into strategic plans and strengthening the capacity of workers to collectively negotiate with employers to adapt novel climate solutions. And you might say, why would this even matter? It's because in recent surveys of workers in the informal economy, it showed that 70% identified rising temperatures as a concern, with 90% believing that climate change will negatively impact their work. And I think, Thea, you kind of mentioned it with the extreme heat work. We're seeing climate have such fundamental impacts on the health and well-being of workers that bringing the climate into the negotiations is really key from a workplace condition issue. And in Colombia, we've partnered with the government and indigenous communities in Guadalajara Desert to ensure that traditionally marginalized groups benefit from the energy transition. And we're doing that by offering vocational training and opportunities for indigenous youth to work in these emerging renewable markets. So those are just 2 examples of many different projects that are happening across the globe. And recently, at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, USAID joined the call to action to foster a social dialogue for a just transition to resilient, low-carbon economy. Sorry, that is quite a mouthful in terms of the name of the declaration. And that was really, though, to affirm our commitment to addressing climate change in a way that is just and equitable. So thank you.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you so much for those concrete examples of the work that you're doing. And I think this is, really one of the themes that we want to talk about today, which is how, when we do the good work about addressing climate change and we involve workers and democratic organizations and communities, the policies are better for it. It's not just that we're doing the right thing, but it is that we are actually improving the outcomes because we also are building support and knowledge and awareness. Now, thanks also for mentioning the informal sector, because I think that is one of the enormous challenges. It's where a lot of a lot of problems happen in terms of energy use and so on, but it's also where workers are most disempowered and disadvantaged, and where we often don't have the laws, the labor laws, or the energy policy laws to be able to do that. So I think addressing these things together is really important. Christopher, I want to turn back to you to see if there are key lessons or what you feel are the most important pieces going forward from just transition that the Department of Energy has been involved in, and how can we use that to inform the discussions that are happening this week right here?
Thank you for that. And I described some of the processes that we used in order to pick and to support industries, clean energy industries, but that also includes things like low-carbon steel and clean concrete, and even food processing that's lower carbon emitting. So really, we're talking about more than just the energy industry. But I want to mention that while it's early days in terms of this investment, we seem to be seeing positive results already. In the first 3 years of the Biden administration, clean energy employment rose by 400,000 jobs. Unionization rates in clean energy are outpacing the energy sector average generally, which is happening for the first time ever. Also of note, the jobs, you ask, does conditioning some of this support on going to communities and involving communities actually get to the right places? It appears that it does. 81% of the counties that received this support, where factories, et cetera, are being built, were below average income. And 87% of those counties, of all counties receiving the income, were below average college attendance. So we're creating good jobs in places where people don't need to have college degrees, and it's just ripe for strong workforce and unionization. So while the factories will be coming online over the next decade, I think we're seeing early signs of results. What would be the takeaways? I'd say I'd point to a couple things. One, that when we're demonstrating new technologies, and that's really where we've put our thumb on the scale, we're not just demonstrating the technology, which is how the department has traditionally looked at the government role. We're also demonstrating the technology in the context of the workforce and the community. And you can look at that as kind of the holistic piece, as we do, but also that's good for the outcome of the project. Projects are more likely to succeed when they have community acceptance. And this is certainly true in our current situation with regard to labor force. There's so much construction happening in the United States right now on these and other projects that labor, particularly in some of the very skilled sectors, is scarce. Having project labor agreements, working with the local unions, actually ensures that projects remain on time and keeps budgets down. We've found this already. So those are really important aspects. The last thing I'd say is, and I know this applies to everyone looking at this around the globe, is this kind of just transition needs to be place-based. It needs to be centered on communities. Preserving a workforce is preserving a community. And for our communities that are going through clean energy transition, this is incredibly important. You see so many single industry or single factory towns that when the factory or the power plant leaves, the community crumbles. And so looking to do that intervention where we can in place, replacing like that coal asset to one that's nuclear powered or clean energy or manufacturing based, and working with labor to make sure that that workforce comes over intact, gets the retraining necessary, is what preserves those communities, and it makes this transition work in the long run. So I think those are really the lessons that we've taken away so far.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I think those are tremendously valuable lessons, not just for industrialized countries, but for the whole world. Because, I think especially your point about place-based, one of the things that we know is an obstacle to moving ahead with an aggressive, ambitious climate goal is the fear of displacement and loss of jobs. And certainly I'll say in the United States, I come out of the labor movement myself, that some of the fear was, well, our current jobs in the fossil fuel industry are unionized. The new jobs back, 10 years ago in renewable energy are not unionized. They pay less. Why should that be a good deal? So if we make those new jobs good jobs and unionized jobs, and if we make sure that they are targeted in places that have been hard hit and that the skills are available. So I really appreciate all of those points you made. I'm also about labor bottlenecks. I think, we're not the only country that experiences some labor shortages so using that opportunity to make sure that we are really creating good jobs at good wages with union rights, but also making sure those skills development are targeted at populations that might need them are so important. Chris, transitioning over back to the international side, we're bouncing back and forth like a ping pong ball, but we really love to hear more about the Just Energy Transition projects and what successes you've seen there, because I think that also will bring us lessons for this week's negotiations.
Well, I know we're jumping back and forth, but I hope people are kind of seeing those common threads that exist, and I think Christopher hit on a really important one. It is about lodging these solutions in the community. Whether you're talking about the just transition on trying that from the renewable energy side, or you're also talking about it on communities that are fossil fuel dependent and helping that transition take place. And so, as the world transitions off fossil fuels, coal-dependent emerging economies are going to have a difficult road ahead, and we need to acknowledge that. They have to decommission coal plants, they have to transition to clean energy, they have to train workers, they have to provide economic opportunities in affected communities. And that's a huge undertaking, and I don't ever want to, sell that short. And Christopher, I think it's for the reasons you mentioned. When you even become single industry focused, those transitions are much harder. So the Just Energy Transition Partnerships are country-led platforms that support South Africa, Indonesia's, and Vietnam's ambitions to lower emissions in line with climate goals. And as you mentioned, this is really key to the negotiations. The countries seek to decarbonize their energy sectors through a combination of the retirement of carbon-intensive assets and deployment of clean energy technologies, and ideally align with stakeholder efforts to achieve energy transitions. So I think I want to mention South Africa, who's kind of furthest along on these. They're called JET-P partnerships. At COP29, the U.S., working with the United Kingdom, France, Germany, and the European Union, announced the first JET-P partnership, which was with South Africa. And the partnership supports South Africa's accelerated energy transition away from coal and is helping the country chart really a pathway forward for a low-carbon economy that achieves national climate and socioeconomic goals. So the activities that the partnership is supporting right now is to develop critical workforce skills, engage coal communities, again, that community focus that will be impacted by the energy transition, and support that economic diversification through catalytic grant funding for small and medium-sized enterprises. In Indonesia, the partnership is with Japan and the United States, along with some international partners as well. And the JET-P program there is intended to accelerate an ambitious and fair power sector transition by phasing out coal and, again, increasing renewable energy. And in Vietnam, the U.S. government is working with the EU and UK and other G7 international partners, again, on trying to phase out the coal, and then, again, working on renewable energy transition. What we're doing as we start developing the JET-P partnerships there is how to integrate just and equitable approaches to the energy transition. Again, looking at the workforce development skills, economic diversification, and the community engagement as well. So that's a little bit about the JET-P partnership. There is a fourth one developing in Senegal that the U.S. isn't part of, but we'd like to see more of these models working really closely with communities. And then just outside of JET-P, what I want to mention is we have a number of different climate financing partnerships that are taking place, and so we're often working with a number of partners, again, on that positive side of going to clean energy. How do you make sure those new projects are transitioning, including diverse communities? And especially as we think about clean energy, it's a tremendous opportunity for women to become involved in that work. So a lot of focus is how do we bring women and engage women in terms of the opportunities, especially in the STEM areas, for the just energy transition.
Wonderful, Chris. Thank you so much for that. And I think the Just Energy Transition Partnerships are a really wonderful example of bringing all the stakeholders to the table to craft policies that are durable and effective. So very much appreciate that. And so, with that, we're very happy that the Department of Labor is here this year and last year. This is last year was the first time the Department of Labor was actually represented at a COP talks for the United States. And there are not that many labor ministries here, but this is something that I think is really important and that we've certainly been talking up with our friends at the G20 because the foreign affairs ministries and the energy ministries that are here, that are engaged in the negotiations, aren't always aware of some of the labor social protection issues and the skills issues and the community-based issues and the labor rights protections that are so important to successful policies. So we're just really happy that we've been able to be part of this, and I think the U.S. government has done a good job of trying to connect. And the last point you made, Chris, about involving women, in the United States, we've also have a lot of skills training and apprenticeships that are directed at women to get them into good jobs in the clean energy sector. And I think it's been very successful. I think I saw that more than half of the new jobs have been created have gone to women. And so, we are definitely able to make a difference. We're moving the dial on equity as well as clean energy. And with that, thank you so much, Christopher and Chris. But we want to open it up. We have a few minutes left. So if there are any questions from the audience, from the panel, we would welcome you to do that. And we have a microphone right there if you want to raise your hand if anybody has a question or a comment. And yes, over here. And please identify yourself. Thank you so much.
Okay, very interesting conversations. My name is Binta Mustafa, and I was very interested in the USAID women specific STEM. Because that's my forte. That's what I do. I am a U.S. exchange program, Tech Women. So it's a program by the State Department that sponsors women in 21 countries, including my country, to the U.S. for immersion program with mentors in the U.S. STEM area. So are there specifics that you can tell me about that I can take home for transitioning women in my country, for example, and other West African countries for a just transition, skills, employment opportunities by the USAID? That's my interest.
So a lot of USAID's programs are very kind of mission and I know the headphones. A lot of USAID's programs are very kind of country and mission specific, so I'd love to grab you afterwards to kind of get your information and try to make some of those connections. But for folks in general interested in this, USAID has this amazing website which is full of tremendous resources. So if you go and look up at our energy page, it'll have quite a bit of information about these individual programs and where some of these are taking place.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Binta, for that question. Any other questions from the audience? Any other questions at this time? Good.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a little.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Rav Gabin from Nigeria. Yeah, I'm specifically concerned about USAID intervention with informal sector
especially within the global south. With energy transitions, the informal sector seem to be most impacted. Has there been any specific intervention within the global south that is supporting, especially women in the informal sector, to move out of, to transit as well in a manner that supports urban supports the urban poor from moving as well, instead of further worsening the condition of workers in that sector, with specific reference to the informal sector, I mean.
So there is a bunch of different programs. I think, make sure I put it, I don't know if you're speaking specifically about Nigeria or across the board. Or both, okay. On Nigeria, we'd probably have to get back to you because I don't know the specifics that might be taking place in the country. So I'll get some information after the meeting. USAID does a lot, especially with this administration, has been very rooted in terms of making sure that development is very locally driven, inclusive, and looking very much at gender equity issues. And that goes across a number of different of our programs. So in the energy sector, yes, definitely working very closely with the informal workers on safety and health issues. A lot around women empowerment, different types of women empowerment programs. So either if they're working in a specific sector within that, or like I was mentioning, trying to even do more to help women get into like the new clean energy sector. You know, women are impacted by like these transitions that are happening in coal-dependent communities as well. So it's also doing some outreach as well to that community within that sector as well. So I'd be happy to do some additional follow-up, but yes, working with informal workers is very key to the work that USAID does across a number of different sectors.
Had a question?
Hello, can you hear me? Thank you. Yes. I'm Jason Meggs. I work internationally on transportation and clean energy and other human rights and health issues. There's a tremendous opportunity and a need to decarbonize through the provision of light electric vehicles. These can include tuk-tuks, all the 2- and 3-wheelers, but also you can have more car-like vehicles that go at higher speeds. We could have a substitution globally, also in developed countries, the wealthy countries, high-income countries, to these types of vehicles, much faster and with a much more affordable, equitable mobility across the world. Now, I know of many places in Africa where people are trying to form local factories so that local workers would make as much as they can of these vehicles, which makes the vehicle much more affordable where they live, by even an order of magnitude or two. So, maybe not two, 2 or 3 times in order of magnitude. So my question is, what are the opportunities to build capacity and set a course toward that type of paradigm shift, which has so much to offer and is so much more achievable than many of the current investments that are happening around heavy vehicles?
Do you know anything about that?
That's a great question, and obviously a big part of our own domestic United States investment was focused on vehicles. Different than what you mentioned, though, because we're really just talking about passenger vehicles and industrial-sized vehicles. The opportunity for different-sized vehicles, different-sized batteries is quite large. One of the best opportunities is actually to, especially for the carbon intensity and affordability, is to do it closer to the source of the supply chain. So, for instance, for batteries, lithium and other critical materials that go into the battery, the farther you can get near the supply chain, often which isn't in the United States and often is in the developing world, does bring down the carbon intensity, does bring down the cost of doing that. The question, I guess, is in terms of reaching that paradigm shift, what we can do to fund that or encourage that more. I think more research and development on our side is a good way to help. but certainly international investment in that. So overseas investment will help.
Jason and I had a chance to talk about this yesterday, and so, Jason, I think the same thing applies. You know, USAID really does try to provide the enabling conditions for these type of transitions. I think it's really working with country or working with the private sector in that country that looks at determining the technology that might be most suitable. So we wouldn't get into that kind of stage of thing, but setting those enabling conditions in place.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we're just about at the end of our time, and I wanted to see if Christopher and Chris have any final remarks that you wanted to make, just in conclusion.
No final remarks other than to conclude where I started, which is that every person I've talked to from around the world today has asked about what the impact of the U.S. election is going to be on U.S. climate policy. And I just want to emphasize that the legacy of this administration is not as much a regulatory regime as it is an industrial strategy that set up a clean energy industry in the United States. So it is not dependent on government at this point to continue to propagate and to continue to drive down carbon intensity through those investments as those factories come online, as those products become cheaper, and as people begin to uptake them and deploy them more. So really hopeful, even with a potential change in policy.
I think I would say this is one of these times where the domestic and the international arena are very kind of similar. There's a lot of durability. There's in kind of the climate work USAID has done because of how much it underlies whether we can have development and humanitarian gains and maintain those. So I think that's very similar. What we hear from our partners, which I think is going to show that progress going forward, is people come in wanting help around how do we get more clean energy. We're seeing it being much more efficient and effective from a cost perspective. People are seeing new opportunities. So I think at the country level in which we work, our partners and allies are going to want to still see the U.S. engaged and coming in to support that effort. So I think there's a lot of durability here as well, based on kind of the work that has been done by the Biden-Harris administration to kind of lay that groundwork for transition.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christopher and Chris. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Give a round of applause to our great panelists. I also want to thank the U.S. Center for hosting us today. And just to say, finally from the U.S. Department of Labor, we do both domestic and international. And so also really echo that the importance for us when we talk about just transition and social dialogue is that the enduring contributions and engagement by workers, unions, civil society, and business go beyond any particular administration as well. So many thanks to all of you, and look forward to hopefully a productive week. Thanks so much.
Thank you everybody for coming to the U.S. Center. Our last event today is at 4:45, going all in and all out, sustaining and accelerating America's progress with bold, durable, subnational climate action. And that'll be with America's All In, WWF, our Department of Energy as well. That's at 4:45 here at the U.S. Center.
We loved having you join us at the U.S. Center. Please remember to return your headsets as you leave. Welcome to the U.S. Center. Our event will start soon. To adjust the sound on your headsets, use the volume rocker on the side near the power button. If you are curious about the full U.S. Center schedule, please scan the QR code at the reception desk.
you need earphones? Anyone else need earphones? Can everyone hear? Yes? I don't know. All right. I'm Liz Beardsley with the U.S. Green Building Council, and on behalf of America's All In, ICLEI, U.S. Climate Alliance, and USGBC, welcome to the U.S. Center. So our organizations support local leaders, governors, tribes, and the private sector in implementing meaningful climate action. And with the investments already in place with the Inflation Reduction Act, we are poised to take off and accelerate this momentum that we already have, because America is all in. So it's my extreme privilege to introduce Secretary Granholm. Secretary Granholm has been Secretary of Energy since 2021, previously serving as Governor of Michigan, among many, many accomplishments. She's known for her deep expertise in leveraging the government role at the nexus of manufacturing, jobs, and clean energy. So welcome, Secretary.
Thank you so much. So I'm just here really to deliver a thank you message. Thank you to the America is All In Coalition, the Climate Alliance, and all of those who have been working in the fields, but who are really going to have to work in the fields even more to send the message and the reality that we are not slowing down. We are not going back. No matter who is in the White House, we are moving on this clean energy transition. Right, Gov? All right. Right. And I really feel bullish about this for three reasons. One is that the Inflation Reduction Act, as you know, has been delivering results all across America, but 80% of those investments have gone to red states and red counties. 80%. 57% of the jobs so far are in red states and red counties. The so far is important because these are 10-year investments, right? We've had 900 so far factories announced that they are opening up in America to make the products that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 900 so far. I'm telling you, it is inexorable, this movement. It would be political malpractice to undo the Inflation Reduction Act. Today's the third-year anniversary, by the way, of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Third-year anniversary. But all of those investments, 81% are going to communities, to districts, to counties that have lower than average weekly wages. 86% are going to communities with below average college graduation rates. A lot of those are in rural America. I'm just telling you, this is why there's bipartisan support for the Inflation Reduction Act. A recent poll said 70% of Americans support the Inflation Reduction Act. A majority of Republicans support the Inflation Reduction Act. We've got 18 members of Congress who are Republicans who signed a letter saying you cannot repeal the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. And by the way, what is this all about but an industrial strategy that allows America to reshore manufacturing, to be able to build these products that are in demand globally, make them in America, using American workers, stamped made in America, use them here and export them elsewhere. Why would we want to cede that territory again? We're just now reshoring and getting the ability to build critical minerals for the supply chain, for the batteries, for the electric vehicle. Do we want to give that away? A nation that does not manufacture anything, a nation that does not have a supply chain is a weak nation. We have to send the message that this Inflation Reduction Act is critical to our national security, our energy security, and certainly to jobs across the country. 400,000 jobs so far have been created so far because of the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So I'm confident that this will remain because of those facts. The second reason why is because so many of the technologies have bipartisan support, like nuclear, advanced nuclear, bipartisan support for carbon management technologies, bipartisan support for enhanced geothermal, bipartisan support for hydroelectric power, bipartisan support for enhancing the grid. These technologies with bipartisan support. And the bipartisan support there is to invest in the research and development to bring these technologies to life. That is real. And that has been the history. And we hope with members of Congress who represent these districts, it will be the future. And then the third reason why I'm confident is because of all of you, because of this collection of organizations who are determined to send the message that we're not going back, that we are not stopping, that this transition to a clean energy future is inexorable. So I want to just thank you so much for your willingness to band together again. We did this 7 years ago. We're going to do it again. We're going to keep going, and we're going to build this clean energy future and get us to our goal of net zero by 2050. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Secretary Granholm. Your leadership and partnership has been a game changer for America. My name is Taryn Fennessy. I am the Managing Director of the U.S. Climate Alliance. We are a bipartisan coalition of 24 U.S. governors that represent 60% of the U.S. economy and 55% of the country's population. And as a former governor, Secretary Granholm knows well the power of states and no doubt appreciates the unique role that they play in advancing and accelerating progress. But there is no governor in America who has done more to push us further and faster than our next speaker. We know that often eyes are on Washington, D.C., but those who are in the know that the real action is in the other Washington on the other coast. So please join me in welcoming America's climate governor, the co-chair of America's All In, and the founding member of the U.S. Climate Alliance, Governor Jay Inslee.
Can we give another round of applause to our great Secretary of Energy, who has done such great work? You know, we are given a great gift of democracy in the United States of America, and one of the greatest parts of wisdom of the founders of our nation gave us states. I would note that this is the United States of America, and I'm pretty convinced the reason that they gave us states is that they had the foresight to realize that if by accident someone ever got into the White House who didn't get the memo about climate science, we would have the states to allow us continued leadership to give the world the inspiration of the light of the Statue of Liberty. So I'm here to say the states are an unstoppable force. We remain undiminished in our ambition, and we remain unconstrained by anything the person in the White House can do. And I will tell you this, Donald Trump is not going to stop the states of the United States of fighting to defend the United States against climate change. They will continue on their pursuit, undiminished. He will not stop us in the next 4 years. And I believe that to the bottom of my heart for several reasons. First, let me start with the most obvious. We have started the U.S. Climate Alliance. When we had the first rodeo, this is our second rodeo with Donald Trump. During the first rodeo, we started, Jerry Brown and I, Governor of California U.S. Climate Alliance. We now have 24 states who are allied in this effort. Each of them are pushing the clean energy revolution. Each of them are building clean energy jobs in their state. Each of them, through their own mechanisms, are reducing their carbon footprint. And those 24 states cannot be stopped by anything Donald Trump can do. Let me give you a clear example of that. We, in part, in recognition of this challenge, adopted a thing called we call the Climate Commitment Act. It is the most aggressive cap and invest law in the United States. And it was challenged last Tuesday by some friends of Donald Trump who tried to repeal the Climate Commitment Act at the ballot box. We tested the ability to sustain support for this bold, aggressive climate action at the ballot box. I'm pleased to report to you that Washington citizens soundly, with great vigor, rejected that effort. We defeated that effort to go backwards by 62 to 38. A beacon of progress, a note of support. We are not going backwards. He will not get his paws on our forward-thinking effort in the state of Washington or in these 24 states. You can applaud that if you would like, because I think it is significant. And I will note the power of these states. I think it's kind of sad, frankly, that we don't recognize the power of states to do this hard work. This is hard work, but we are doing it. I look at my state, and at least 85% of the work that we can do cannot be restrained by the federal government. So he will not be able to stop our cap and invest bill. He will not be able to stop our low carbon fuel standard. He will not be able to slow down our building codes that are now bringing efficient building to the state of Washington. And he will not be able to stop any of these states from moving forward for this tremendous work. Our cap and invest bill has generated almost probably as much or more of capital that we're getting from the federal government, wonderful as it is. So I have come to Baku to essentially give the world confidence that we will continue to move forward. Now, I want to trumpet something that the Secretary of Energy said about the Inflation Reduction Act, about the infrastructure bill. There's a couple things you cannot do in the world today. You cannot give candy to a 5-year-old and get it back. It will not work. And you cannot give thousands of jobs to a U.S. congressman, Democrat or Republican, and think you're going to go in and rip those jobs back. That is not going to happen. Donald Trump will learn a lesson. He will not be able to reel these jobs back in now that they are going in place from any members of the U.S. Congress, Democrat or Republican. This is an unstoppable train of progress. This train is on the tracks, and he will get run over if he tries to stop this progress that we have. So I'm excited to be here with you. I know you're going to go home to report on this inevitable progress that we are making, and that ambition is well placed, that confidence is well placed, that aggressivity is well placed. We're going to keep this ball rolling. So you can go home and ask you what happened in Azerbaijan. What you heard is this: in Baku, we are with you. We're going to keep this ball rolling. Congratulations. Good luck to everyone.
Great. Hello, everybody. I'm Marcine Mitchell. I'm the Senior Vice President for Climate Change at the World Wildlife Fund. And WWF, we are very proud to be the managing partner for the America's All-In Coalition. And I don't have to tell this crowd the origin story of America's All-In. In 2017, after the first Trump administration had pulled us out of the Paris Agreement, we came to COP with a coalition of governors, of mayors, of businesses, universities, tribal nations, healthcare organizations, civil societies, and we said, we are still in. And over the past 4 years, we have doubled down on that. We have grown. We have strengthened our muscle. We have made progress. And as Governor Insley has said, and Secretary Granholm, we are not going back. We are only going forward. So I thank the leaders that we have here. Governor Insley as one of our true climate leaders, and has helped us through this as head of one of the co-chairs of the America's All-In Coalition. And I'd also like to bring to the stage and introduce to you some of our other leaders of the America's All-In Coalition. So first, I'd like to bring up Yana Garcia, who's the Secretary for Environmental Protection from the state of California. Melissa Logan, who is the mayor of Blytheville, Arkansas. And Helen Walter Terranoni, who is the Director for Global Climate Policy of Trane Technologies. Thank you all. This is going to be a great panel, and I'd like to kick it off before I hand it over to the panel and start with one question. So can you tell us how the historic federal investment and collaboration at all levels are benefiting your city or your business or your state, as well as the workers and the communities? And how do you intend in this new environment to sustain and protect this progress? Who wants to?
I'll go ahead and start. Thanks very much for the question, and thanks for the opportunity to be here with so many of you. This is actually my first COP. Secretary for Environmental Protection, State of California, has never been to the COP before. Several of my predecessors have for many years, and proud to lead an agency that has a long history engaging in the execution of international agreements and leading COP delegations in the past. But this is a very interesting time to be here, I'll put it that way. And Governor Insley, of course, said it very well, that we're really locking in the ability to continue with this momentum in the renewable energy revolution, and slashing our emissions, ensuring that we're maintaining our commitments no matter who is in the White House. So I'm really grateful for everybody's commitment in doing just that. And I think some of the biggest benefits that we've received and that we have really been proud of in terms of our partnership with the Biden-Harris administration over the past 4 years has been around investments in primarily, I think, our ports and goods movement and freight corridors. So we've received $1 billion for 7 of our ports to decarbonize these ports in California. I think many of you may be aware, but California is well on its way toward achieving carbon neutrality by 2045. This requires a 94% reduction in fossil fuel consumption and use, primarily in the transportation sector. We're better off if we focus our emission reductions where we can get air pollution and health benefits most immediately, and that's in our heavy-duty freight and transportation goods movement corridors, including in our ports. And so we're really proud of this effort, really proud to see these dollars well underway to make a difference for health and economic mobility for so many of our residents. I think some of the co-benefits that we see when we drive down air pollution in our most heavily pollution-burdened communities are also, again, these economic mobility co-benefits. You see more days to be able to attend school, less days when kids are going out of school for asthma and ER visits. You see health cost savings. We've estimated that the implementation of our carbon neutrality plan or our path to carbon neutrality will actually yield $20 billion in health cost savings. And make no mistake that these federal investments, including those in our ports, will make this possible. In addition to the $1 billion for the 7 ports in our state, we also have $500 million that was just awarded to the South Coast Air Basin, and I see some of our colleagues from formerly from the South Coast Air Quality Management District here in the room today. Again, this is driving down air pollution burdens in some of the most polluted cities in the world. As much as progress as we're making, we still have so much farther to go in these communities, and this yields jobs. These are jobs in socioeconomically disadvantaged communities, and frankly, some of the communities that have flipped to vote more Republican. And we're seeing that there is, again, this tethering of jobs and infrastructure and growth of our economy that is associated with the inability to pull that back. So we're really confident that we'll continue to see that move forward, but extraordinarily grateful to the Biden-Harris administration for their partnership in that. And with that, I will ask, I think, the second question to my esteemed colleagues here, who are really the leaders on the ground, first and foremost, primarily with you, Mayor Logan. Maybe we'll start there. But as a leader on the ground responsible for some of the most innovative and impactful climate action in America, what's on the horizon for you? What are some of the solutions and actions that you're most energized and excited about in the year ahead?
Thank you, Secretary. I want to tell you guys that I'm most excited about being able to affect change at the lowest level. I represent the common people, if I can say that. So I am a part, I'm here not only representing my city, but I am a part of a coalition of mayors along the Mississippi River. I am here as a component of Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. And what that is a group of 105 bipartisan mayors, which means that we speak from both sides of the aisle. But the most important part of what we do is to protect that critical infrastructure that is the Mississippi River. I said earlier on a panel that no one in the world can really think about how critical water is until it's not existing anymore. But the Mississippi River is responsible for 1 in 12 meals across the earth. That's huge. That's huge. And so what are we doing in my area of the country to promote climate action? Is we are now in partnership, we're forging public-private partnerships between NGOs and private corporations. We recently entered into an agreement with Ducks Unlimited to deploy 100,000 acres of wetlands. And if you know anything about the Mississippi River, we are now in our 3rd year of low water. So we have been experiencing a drought for the last 3 years, and we have lost, just in my area alone, about $28 million in resources, but along the river since 2005, about $256 million of goods and services that we cannot transport because of our river running in a drought. So this wetland that we're deploying will help us absorb the water when it's raining, and it would help us release the water in areas of drought. So this new and innovative deployment of natural resources is going to redeem the river. I like to use it like that. We're going to honor our water, and we're going to redeem our river so that we're able to move these goods so that we can help feed the rest of the world.
Thank you for that. And Helen, how about for you?
I think this is on. No, yeah. Okay. Now it's on. Yes, this is. Okay. All right. So I work for Train Technologies, and I'm just going to explain a little bit about what that is and what that means in this space. So we are the largest heating and cooling company in the world, and we range in kind of temperatures down minus 80 degrees. So think Pfizer vaccine, all the way up to industrial process heating, right? So with that, it's kind of buildings, so that's 40% of the world's emissions. And then if you think about food and tack that on, we estimate about 15% there. So it's a pretty big space that we potentially can impact. And we kind of have a saying in our company that one company can change an industry and one industry can change the world. So we just have a little task on our to-do list to change the world. We're viewed by the Carbon Trust as the industry transformer, and as we kind of look at everything that's kind of happening around us, we think about several aspects of things, right? We're looking at energy efficiency. We're looking at from the recent regulations there. We're looking at the IRA and the work done there around the infrastructure, our Thermo King containers that ship over 60% of the world's fresh and frozen product. That port infrastructure is going to be really helpful to us long term, right? And then we need more infrastructure around the country so that we can think about decarbonizing that space. But the opportunity is there, right? And it comes down to our volunteer customers who tell us what they want, right? We need to respond to what they're asking for, and many of them are asking for, decarbonized technologies. We're a very innovative company. We come up with very clever solutions, and we are, we were certainly eager and able to provide them for our customers. On the policy front, I did want to mention that we spend a lot of time focused on making sure that these new technologies can be enabled across the country and around the world. And then we also think about the uptake, and the IRA has really been a tool around the uptake and adoption of technologies. And for us, and then from the other side of things, from the employment side of things, we do take a leadership role there as well. We do a lot of work to make sure that we are bringing in new talent into the workforce from all veterans, as well as we have a returnship program, so bringing moms back into the workforce or people that have had a gap in their work space. So we are thinking about all of those things from the lens, from a holistic lens as a company, and trying to kind of make sure that we are leading and bringing the rest of the industry with us.
That's great. Thank you. And then, going all in obviously requires a whole of society approach, including tapping into the skills of women, youth, indigenous communities, and members of communities that have historically faced disproportionate impacts of the climate crisis. Can you share a little bit more, maybe in the same order, about how centering all of these communities in your work is accelerating climate progress?
I like the way, I guess, that question is framed. I sit here, I was just having a conversation with some ladies in the audience, as I want you to listen to this proportion. I am a black woman. I'm from one of the poorest states in a city that's 75% looking like me. So that means that if I'm going to have a voice, I'm going to have a partnership with someone who has a voice so that they can bring me along. Does that make sense? Because by alone, I am underrepresented. Alone, my voice is not loud enough. But collectively, partnerships for women in power, women in politics, it goes a long way. MRCTI has currently in its COFER the mayor of New Orleans, Louisiana, who is a woman, the mayor of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who is a woman, the mayor of Gretna, Louisiana, who is a woman, and the mayor of St. Louis, Missouri, who is a woman. We are all women who are crying out for climate action. And I like to say that we're moving from ambition to action, because at the lowest level, we are responsible for human needs. There was a question posed to me on my last panel. Why, when surveyed across the United States, did they only get a 51% response that climate action is critical for moving forward? And I told them that when you represent people that are disadvantaged, disproportionate, and there is economic disparity and racial disparity, we think about jobs, we think about food before we think about climate. So it's up to us to get the word out that climate action is going to happen, whether we oppose it or whether we, push it. Because we see what has happened along the coastline of New Orleans. They've been hit year after year after year by terrible storms that is making them a disadvantaged community and causing them to move out of their indigenous lands. But the way to protect it is to affect climate action at our levels, in the home, in the community, and at the lowest level, which is at the city level. And so I really appreciate you guys letting me exercise my voice on this panel today. Thank you.
Appreciate you and your leadership. Maybe just quickly before I turn it over to you, Helen. Yeah, wonderful. I do want to share as well, being myself the first Latina secretary for the Environmental Protection Agency in a state with 40 million people, over 40% of whom are Latinos, I can very much relate to being a first in this respect, and to the power of coalition, the power of solidarity, and really seeing the partnership across so many levels of government and levels of identity and framing. I think it's been critically important for us in California to frame our climate solutions as solutions that yield health benefits, yield jobs, yield investment in communities. And we've had a strong track record of doing just that, and we intend to continue. But Helen, why don't I kick it over to you to hear your thoughts on this?
I had a different answer, but you guys are messing me up. No, I'm an engineer, and when I first started being an engineer, there were very few women in the room. And over time and encouragement and more outreach and encouraging women to come into the field. We have seen that grown and taken hold and had strength. But let me get back to my real answer. To that end, so I'm going to talk about some very practical, boots on the ground kind of things that we do as a company to try to make sure that we're thinking about these things. So, we strive, we do a great deal of outreach to women to kind of shore up the women in our organization. We also do a lot around, we have an astounding volunteerism spirit. We have a goal of by 2030 that is quite large in the number of hours to accomplish as a company. And a lot of that includes STEM education. And we have people who are really excited about it. And, I think we're growing young people up to kind of come into our company in the places where we manufacture and the places where we work. And I think that is astounding to bring in those communities, because some of our facilities are in very low income areas. And I think that's going to be very helpful long term. Some of the other kind of very practical things that we do. So, this is just kind of a general culture piece for our company. And again, it's but I find people take their pens out when I say this. So two pieces to this puzzle. One, every person in our company is to have a sustainability goal, and that really, I think, is educational and also does some work around hearts and minds around this space. The other thing is that our leadership is paid in part based on reductions in emissions of greenhouse gases from the customer's use of our products. And I say that, and then I say it again, and I say it again, and then all of a sudden people realize what I said, and that our compensation pay is based on greenhouse gas reductions. And I think that kind of helps our kind of understand our commitment and how committed we are. Beyond that, some of the other kind of very practical things, if you look at the IRA, there are components of that. If you look at the greenhouse gas, the fund that's kind of going through Climate United and Rewiring America, that, is intended to, with the cash that's infusing through that's intended to have a benefit 7 times that amount of cash by borrowing and reusing that money. And a lot of that's intended, especially from the Climate United front, to bring energy efficiency levels up, especially for low and medium income families. That lowers their costs and the money that they have to pay for heating and cooling, as well as the benefit from a greenhouse gas perspective as well. So just a couple of really practical things there that we do as a company, as well as some of the other things that we have quite a number of ways that we reach out for employees. We have. It may not sound like it, but we have 3,000 technicians that work for us. So, we're always bringing in technicians and training, and, that's kind of some of those practical blue-collar jobs that, that make for a good family life, right? And they also upskill to, to be able to be move forward to other careers as well as some people stay technicians their entire career. So there's a lot of work that we do there. The other thing that we try to look at is from this lens is again, it's kind of these very practical issues, though. We try to look at things like passive cooling measures and other measures that low-cost solutions that can help everyone, but especially important when we think about regreening cities and other things to that effect. So a lot of kind of micro actions that we take as a company are kind of focused in this arena. And it's part of our very collaborative culture and spirit of kind of including everyone and uplifting everyone in our work. So
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. I think I'll just give kudos to the federal administration as well for one more aspect that I think is noteworthy, particularly in this topic. The Justice 40 initiative, that was such a central part of the investment strategy from the Biden-Harris administration, really brought into focus the need not only to address from an equity standpoint where our investment dollars go, but also what benefits they're bringing to those communities sort of broadly, writ large. And I will toot our horn in California a little bit more here, because we engaged in early discussions with the then incoming Biden-Harris administration using our model in California that we developed through the use of a tool called CalEnviroscreen, which tracks disproportionate pollution burdens in combination with socioeconomic factors for California communities, meriting a little bit more attention and certainly more investment for us in California from our cap and trade program. Since 2014, we've invested over 70% of revenue generation from our cap and trade program in these communities. And we've not only used these dollars to invest in pollution reduction technologies, but also in housing, transit-oriented infill development, jobs creation in terms of thinking about what the need and what the educational level is at the community level in California. And so we're really proud of this work and want to see it continue. We think that in California, certainly, it will continue to be a model for the rest of our states. Welcome any of you representing states and even municipal or regional governments to continue to use these models as we move forward. They are going to continue to be critical as we're shaping the climate solutions that our communities need and that they deserve. Now, I think we are out of time. Oh, I'm so sorry. We're not out of time. We can actually have time for questions from the audience, which is great.
Thank you all for your perspectives. This was really wonderful. My name is Corey Husick. I represent a consortium of small colleges in Pennsylvania, but previously was a resident of California. So I have a question directed to you, Secretary. You mentioned this $1 billion that's going to decarbonize ports. And from what I gather, that's largely going to create infrastructure that's cleaner than what's currently there. Does the state have any say, or should it have any say in emissions that are generated from ships coming into the port and trains and trucks leaving, in addition to sort of changing the infrastructure at the port itself?
Simplest answer, yes. So in California, we do have shore power regulations that require an amount of plug-in ships to come to our ports. We have engaged in a long regulatory trajectory toward getting to that point. We also have, several regulations for the rapid decarbonization of our fleets in general, as well as our trucks serving our port areas. We're seeing a lot more uptake in drayage electrification. We're seeing a lot more, I think one of the strongest parts of this piece of investment that we've seen from the federal government is that we're seeing a lot more deployment of charging infrastructure near our ports and serving our ports. Our ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach have made great strides in electrifying certainly their short-haul trucks as well as their drayage equipment. And it'd be remiss to not mention also the importance of private partnership in this respect. So at the ports of LA and Long Beach, through a partnership with Amazon and Volvo, we also just recently deployed, 50 longer haul heavy-duty trucks. 50, I think, is still a number too small. We'd like to see several hundred more of these, especially in these communities, but still noteworthy. I come from a regulatory agency and a regulatory background. In my view, nothing incents private investment better than a good, strong regulation. That's something that the Air Resources Board within my agency really prides itself in. I won't sugarcoat the fact that obviously with a very different relationship with a federal administration, we do have a difference in how we're approaching some of the commerce issues. But I guess I will also just take a minute to mention another private partnership that I'm particularly proud of, not port-related, but in terms of sustainable aviation fuels. The Air Resources Board and the state of California just a couple weeks ago launched a private partnership with Airlines for America, a coalition of 12 airlines to increase the amount of sustainable aviation fuel by tenfold by 2030. And this we anticipate will serve 40% of intrastate flights and demand, which is huge for us. And so while we're decarbonizing, our ports and goods movement and freight corridors, also looking at the hubs where our airports are located. These are also some of the more disadvantaged communities and pollution-burdened communities, and so driving down the emissions from aviation is also a priority for us as we move forward.
You also have a $6 million heat pump partnership, public-private partnership.
Hello. Thank you for your insight. My name is Kimberly Dowdell. I represent the American Institute of Architects. Just wanted to get your insight on what you're specifically doing in California related to the built environment, which we know contributes around 40% of carbon emissions. And if others on the panel want to chime in too, but I think, specifically California, which works closely with AIA California to really move the needle. But if you, love to hear a little bit more about what you're seeing.
Yeah, so our building decarbonization pathway is also, well underway. I think one of the things that we're really proud of and hopeful for, and I'll turn it to you immediately after, is, as Governor Inslee mentioned, our building codes are in so many ways insulated from a federal change in administration. We're really happy about that. We've seen many of our cities adopt really stringent requirements. I think the primary concern that we have in California is one of affordability, ensuring that our rapid decarbonization of buildings doesn't come with a price tag that hurts low-income Californians. In the city of Berkeley, as an example, we have a requirement that all new development, including remodels, all has to come with fully electric buildings. No more gas lines in new buildings and construction. So we're really proud of that. And again, I'm really focused through our Public Utilities Commission within the state of California to make sure that doesn't translate into increased rates for Californians.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about California, but I could talk about other states as well. But I think as I think about, we talked about policy durability earlier. You heard Governor Insley talk about the candy, right? And taking candy away from the 5-year-old, right? And I think that, one of the things that we're very focused on as a company is kind of what I call sticky, durable policies, right? So, as this money goes out the door from the IRA and other places, that's sticky, durable policy. Building codes are very sticky. They're locally written, and city ordinances, those things are locally written and can be very strong. The California codes are very strong from an energy efficiency perspective, from a building performance standard perspective, as you probably know. So looking at the overall climate impact of the total building and reducing that as they go and looking for options to do that. So you get choices. You can maybe optimize from a cost perspective. I think, building performance standards are very important. And then, and so, as we think of policies that benefit society, that are, just well-founded, have had full-throated conversations like CEC or partner organization, California Energy Commission, and others. Those things and can withstand the test of time. And I think that we're going to see more of that as ICC and others kind of look at their next round of energy codes, kind of looking at those opportunities as they go for sticky, durable policy. I'm sure.
In a small city like mine, we're moving slowly with architectural policy per se. However, where I am, we sit directly on the New Madrid Fault. And so a new building code requirement is that everything that is being newly erected is built to earthquake standard. So, yes, ma'am, we are moving toward a more sustainable, durable building code.
I'll also just note very quickly one of the biggest challenges for us in California, certainly bringing down emissions from our buildings, but is also creating more water resilient buildings and landscaping. And that's something that for an arid state like ours and anywhere else that shares a similar situation that we are in with diminishing water supplies, including our groundwater supplies, building in a budget for conservation is sort of the next frontier, if you will, when it comes to regional and local planning. And we could really use all the best and brightest creative minds in architectural design and landscaping and understanding how to best manage and conserve our water for future generations.
And I should have mentioned as well, GBC, hello, duh, like LEED, those LEED programs that are kind of like the proving ground for building codes and creative and excellent solutions from this perspective. Like, those kind of walk through the door first, and then others have the confidence to follow. And I think that we're going to continue to see ambition there, and that type of LEED certification, other things. I think we're going to continue to see aspiration and ambition there.
I think that does it for our time. Thank you all again for joining us. Thanks for having me as a step-in moderator.
Thank you.
Thanks.
On your chairs and come back tomorrow. We got a full suite of more events tomorrow and next week. So many events.
This was the last event of the day at the U.S. Center. We know parting is such sweet sorrow. But don't worry, we'll be back again tomorrow.